the Jazz Notes podcast. I'm your host, Ben Anderson.
I'm Chandler Holt.
Welcome back, Chandler.
Thank you.
Nice to have you back. Hope you enjoyed your 2 weeks. You were still working, but you just weren't in town doing podcasting. But always nice to have Chandler back, but that also means that the computer whiz is back because I'm almost 40, and that means I don't know how to, or I pretend to not know how to use computers. So we are back on YouTube. So
Yes.
If you are a listener, or maybe you're going into work, you listen during a break, you want to finish the episode, you can find us on YouTube however you want to do it, or wherever you get your podcasts. Of course, read us at kslsports.com. Find us on Twitter and Blue Sky at Ben's Hoops or C Holt Sports. We will go through some weekly news, actually big news because the schedule came out. A little bit going on with EuroBasket as we are a little more than a week away from the actual games that matter kicking off, but there's been some good and some bad news coming out of EuroBasket for the Jazz, and then we'll get to your mailbag. So we'll start with the weekly news, which is the schedule came out.
Yes.
We got the Cup games, I think, last Wednesday, and then the full schedule coming up on Thursday, and I don't want to really bug everyone with the Cup games necessarily. It's Phoenix on Halloween. It's Minnesota a week later. These games, Jazz are I think one of the only teams that play all their Cup games on Fridays. They're either Friday night or Wednesday night games. The Jazz randomly, they're the only team in their group that doesn't have a Wednesday game. So they're all on Fridays. But Friday at Phoenix on Halloween, as I mentioned, November 7th at Minnesota, and then they close up on November 21st and 28th against OKC and Sacramento. Tough draw. Minnesota and OKC are maybe the two best teams in the Western Conference.
Yeah.
And I actually think Phoenix is going to be a little bit better, which I think leads us, than most people expect, leads us into our next question, which was, if we were to look at the Jazz's 82-game schedule, is there a week or is there a 5-game stretch where you think Jazz are going to win most of these games? Like, is there a 3-2 stretch on the schedule for the Jazz this year? Because if we were to go back last year, man, did they ever go 3-2 in a 5-game schedule? I honestly don't know if they did.
But yeah, looking at the schedule, it's kind of interesting because we were looking at the schedule before the podcast started, and we were like, you asked me that exact question. And every time the Jazz play one of these teams that you expect to be a bottom feeder, it's surrounded by teams that at least the Jazz shouldn't win. You know, in the NBA, any team can win any game, but it really may be the start of the season that's the easiest stretch for them.
And notably, the Jazz did go 3-2 once last year.
Okay.
They beat Chicago, lost to Milwaukee, beat San Antonio, lost to Phoenix, beat Dallas. So they had a 5-game stretch there where they went 3-2. Do they repeat that this season? And you mentioned the beginning of the schedule.
Yeah, so starting in game 2, it's the Kings, then the Suns, then the Trailblazers, then the Suns again, and then the Charlotte Hornets. Charlotte is super young. They will likely be a top of the lottery team again. Mm-hmm. Like you mentioned, Phoenix had a lot of changes. But with that said, I still expect them to be like a middle of the pack team, like maybe around the play-in in the West. And then you just don't really know what to expect from Sacramento or Portland. Portland will probably be in a similar position they were last year. But again, that might be the easiest, like looking at the schedule, 5-game stretch. Of course, injuries and all these other things can happen. What do you see?
Clippers are going to be good.
Yep.
And they're going to be healthy. At least that's the thought. Never bet on the Clippers being healthy, but that's the thought. And they got a lot better this offseason. I like the moves that they made, though it's going to take a while for John Collins to figure it out. Like, it took a whole season for John to figure it out. The nice thing is he doesn't need to be their second best player. He needs to be their 5th best player.
Yes.
At Sacramento's just going to be a mess. That's just a horrible team, horrible franchise, unfortunately, because it's a cool city, or at least a cool place to have a team. Phoenix, again, I'm actually buying Phoenix.
Okay.
Like, my hot take this season might be that Phoenix is in the plan.
Okay.
And I know everyone is like, Phoenix is going to be one of the worst teams in the NBA, and they don't control their own draft picks, and they're bad. I think they're going to unlock Devin Booker's ability to just go back to be like, score 60 if you can, Devin.
Yeah.
Jalen Green's going to be able to go. They added some depth. They were just so centrally focused on their 3 guys last year, Bradley Beal and KD and Booker. Just spreading it out a little bit, I think the team's going to make more sense. So I think Phoenix is going to be okay. I think Portland's going to be okay. I think Portland's actually going to be pretty good. And then at Phoenix again, and at Charlotte. But it's just bad. Yeah. Unfortunately, it's just like there's just not wins here. You go through the Jazz stretch, there's just not a lot of wins anywhere on the schedule. So, you can win your season opener, right? The fans are excited. It's goofy. It's the first game of the year. You've been prepping for it for a while. You win that game. You probably don't win on the road in your first game at Sacramento. Maybe you come back and beat Phoenix. But the other issue with this and betting on early games, and look, this is how the Jazz went, 11-3 2 years ago. Sometimes you just come out of the gate not knowing that you're bad yet. You don't really have the evidence that you're bad, so you're trying to be good, and the Jazz could be successful. But if that's the case, that also applies to Sacramento and Phoenix and Portland, who opened the year 0-0 thinking playoffs. Let's go to the playoffs this year. Sacramento should be expecting to go to the playoffs this year, though we know they don't have any chance. But if you have Zach LaVine and you have Domantas Sabonis and you have DeMar DeRozan, that's a team that should go into the season thinking like we're going to compete. We can go beat Utah. They won 17 games last year. And Phoenix should feel the same way. We hated last year. Doesn't seem like the locker room was good at all. But now we've kind of got a team with some young players that are hungry. And Dylan Brooks is a good player, and they have 2 centers actually on their roster. That should be good. And a lot of their young players are in their second year now. That's a positive. Portland should feel the same way. They added Drew Holiday in the offseason. It's just like, more likely the Jazz start out 3-2 or 0-5.
Yeah.
0-5 is still the truth. I don't think that's going to happen either. But if we're talking extremes, Jazz are more likely to go 0-5 than 3-2 to start the year.
Maybe it was similar last year, but also just looking at the list of NBA teams, there aren't as many teams that are just like, okay, they're going to be like in vie for a top 5 pick.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's like the Jazz, the Brooklyn Nets probably, the Washington Wizards, and like the Hornets are going to be
Charlotte probably.
Yeah, they're going to be better than last year, but still probably in that discussion. And then other than that, I feel like it's a lot of teams who are like, you could convince yourself maybe they're a playing team.
Charlotte lost Mark Williams. They traded him to Phoenix, which again is why I think Phoenix will be a little bit better if Mark can be healthy, but he should be healthy early in the year. But they added like Colin Sexton, who will make them play hard. So even like that game at Charlotte, which is whatever the 6th game of the season for the Jazz, like that's a Colin Sexton revenge game. And Colin playing hard means everyone's going to play hard because Colin's a crazy person. So that's a benefit, And then some of these weird games, like Boston, probably not going to be very good this year. Indiana's probably not going to be very good this year. Look at them. Those games are on the second night of a back-to-back. Like, that's the hard part. Those are toss-up games that are the difference between winning 23 or 24 games at the end of the year and winning 20 games because you beat Boston once on the road. It's like, no, you go to Charlotte, then you fly up to Massachusetts and play Boston. Like, that's actually a really tough back-to-back, though the Jazz actually weirdly have some of the fewest back-to-backs in the NBA this year.
And with that said, like even Indiana without Halliburton and Boston without Tatum, I would say they're both better than the Jazz still.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yep.
And like you mentioned, back-to-backs, they have 14, 11 in the first half of the season and only 3 in the second half. Here's just some schedule facts for you. Longest road trip is 5 games. That happens 3 times. Longest homestand is 6 games. That's January 20th through the January 30th. 3 holiday games, like you mentioned. Halloween, the first one, a cup game in Phoenix. New Year's Day in LA against the Clippers, and then on MLK Day against the Spurs. And then 2 nationally televised games with the new NBA TV deal. January 27th, that's the Clippers again on NBC. And then February 23rd, Rockets, that's on Peacock.
Correct. So couple of games, maybe fewer national TV games than I was thinking. I was thinking maybe Prime would pick up some Ace Bailey games just for like the sickos. And they can still always change that. Yeah. The other thing to watch here, and this is what was interesting about last season when the schedule came out. Remember we talked I was like, the Jazz might have 2 or 3 wins entering December. I think that ended up coming true. Yeah. They were awful because the schedule was so loaded. This one's funny because the danger in having a really heavy front-loaded schedule, while that was good for the Jazz last year because it set the tone, they were not going to accidentally start the year 11-3 and think, can we accidentally win some games? That didn't happen. One danger you can have if you're a bad team and you're going to be tanking is having a bunch of bad teams late in your schedule where everybody actually is tanking.
Yes.
And at least for now, we'll just talk after the All-Star break. We'll go through this stretch, and it's kind of a lot of games, so stick with me here. But like teams that should absolutely be better than the Jazz. Memphis.
Yes.
Houston. New Orleans, no, and you get them twice at home. The problem is New Orleans doesn't own their draft pick. Yeah. So they've got no reason to be tanking games at all. This would be one thing. Now, maybe they have traded Zion and everything has fallen apart and they just said, it was a disaster. We, moved up in the draft to go and get Derek Queen and we gave up our unprotected first and we're obviously going to give it up and it's going to be a top 10 pick. That was a mistake. Who cares? We've lost the pick. It's, a failed trade anyways. We're still just going to play Jeremiah Fears and Derek Queen down the stretch regardless. It doesn't matter. Maybe that's where you pick up a couple of wins there. But then Denver's good. I think Philly's going to be better. Yes. I mean, I don't think they're going to be as bad as they were last year. Washington's awful. But again, second night of a back-to-back. This one's on the road. At Milwaukee, I don't think Milwaukee's going to be good, but they're probably competing for a play-in tournament spot. Home against Golden State. Home against the Knicks. At Portland, who's probably competing for a play-in spot. At Sacramento, maybe they're tanking at this point. At Minnesota. Home against Milwaukee. Philly, Toronto might be bad. Washington might be bad at that point. But like Denver, Phoenix, Cleveland, if we're looking at that last month and a half of the season, whatever that's got to be, 15-ish games or so, maybe a little bit more, like 2 games against New Orleans, who again, we've already said they aren't tanking. 2 games against Washington. and one against Toronto.
Yeah.
It's 5 games of like, okay, those might be tanking games. The Jazz are going to go into the All-Star break with 16 wins, which would be a big boost over last year. Remember, they only had 17 on the season total. But if you only have 16 wins at the All-Star break, and that might be a stretch, and you only have like 5 more obvious wins the rest of the way, you're only getting to 21.
Yeah.
Which is, again, how you finish with one of the 4 worst records in the NBA, which is where I think the Jazz are headed. I don't think they're going to be the worst team in the league. I think you look at Brooklyn. I think maybe you look at a team like Charlotte, or Washington can be in this conversation, but like Jazz aren't winning 28 games accidentally because they're not going to the All-Star break with 23 wins and then winning 5 more after that. That's just not happening.
And here's the other thing. Even looking at these Washington, Brooklyn, and even like New Orleans games, last year it was tough because they had John Collins, they had Colin Sexton, they had these guys that were just like, the Jazz are 2 different teams if they're playing and not playing, right? And we even said last year, like, fully healthy, the Jazz are much better than the Wizards, right? This year, you can't really say that. Like, I feel like there's a real argument of who is the worst team out of Brooklyn, Washington, and the Jazz. So it's like even those games in the second half, the Jazz could lose them if they're fully healthy.
By the way, I left off some of the games because I didn't scroll down to April. It's still Denver, Houston, OKC, New Orleans again. So you get New Orleans 3 times, Memphis, and the Lakers.
Yeah.
Like all of those teams are going to be competing. Maybe Memphis is not, but I think Memphis doesn't own their pick either. I think they traded it to Orlando. No, they got picks in Orlando.
Picks, yeah.
So I think Memphis does own their pick. So maybe they're awful. So maybe that's 6 wins. But again, you're talking 22, 23 wins, which is kind of, I've just always had that number circled. And the more I look at the schedule, it's kind of right where I think they are. Low 20s. I think they get out of the teens.
Okay.
But yeah, you're an injury, you're a Lauri injury away from being 15 or 16 wins.
One last point. Like we saw last year, it came down to the final game with the Wizards to figure out who's going to have that, not number 1 odds, but can only fall down to 5th, worst record. The last 5 games of the year for the Jazz, 4 away, one at home. So
yeah,
we will see how it goes. But I agree with you. I think the Jazz will be in that like 18 to 23 range.
Yeah, I just think that's their range. Which you should be able to, with most teams, be able to tell like what their 5-win total is. Like I can tell you the teams are going to be between 43 and 38. The teams are going to be 49 to 53. 2 teams will be above 59 to 64. Like there's only a couple teams that can do that. So that's not that crazy for the Jazz. It's not. I don't think that's a totally drastic leap to take to think that that's where they're going to be. But yeah, 18 to 23 wins I think is a very safe bet for the Jazz.
With that said, similar position. We're projecting like they had 17 wins, so probably a little bit better than last year. But like Austin H said, it's going to be more fun. I am more excited to watch this Jazz team than I was last year's team.
I think there's going to be much better vibes.
Yes.
Way better vibes around the team. With more people pulling in one direction, even if it doesn't necessarily mean a whole lot more wins. But again, you're talking about 6 months. You sprinkle in, I've said this a lot, 6-7 wins. It's like that's a win every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Like that actually starts to feel more and more because you've got the All-Star break and because you've got these little things here and there that break up the schedule. Maybe it's a win every 3 weeks, but like it feels like a lot when the team was going 1-12 over these stretches, over and over and over and over again. So, all right, that's the schedule release. We'll talk more if there's questions about it in the mailbag. Other news and notes, like I said, we're a little more than a week away from EuroBasket. Lauri continues to be dominant. He scored 42 to open. He scored 49 to open, then had 31, and then had 42 in his latest outing.
Yeah, 42 against Poland. And in that game, I think it was 42 points. He also had 12 rebounds.
And the funniest thing is he's playing like 22 minutes in these games. Like it really is like it's a dad playing against a Little League basketball team.
Yeah.
He's just dominating.
And we have a question about the mailbag, so we can get more into it then. But I really do think we will see more of year 1 Utah Jazz Lauri this year. Like I think he will be unleashed. There's no, hey Lauri, we need you to sit. Hey Lauri, we need you to take your foot off the gas. And that's part of the reason why I just said I'm excited to watch this Jazz team, because I wouldn't even be surprised if Lauri, 1, is an All-Star again, and 2, surpasses how good he was in year 1.
That's the good news for the Jazz. The bad news is that apparently Jusuf Nurkic is in very poor shape.
Yes.
His coach with Bosnia and Herzegovina said that, quote, Nurkic is out of shape and can barely run. Which is not good. That was the whole quote. We will see. He had 15 points in their first game, and they've won their last 2 since. Again, these are just warm-up games. Yeah. These are friendlies. These aren't a part of the real tournament. And Nurkic said he was excited to play in these games, but apparently he did not come in shape, where Lauri is cooking. Lauri's ready to go and wants to show off and is playing in front of his home country, and Lauri's a very proud person. You could absolutely see a scenario this year. Look, I've talked to Nurkic since he got traded. We got to talk to him. He seemed excited to be here.
Mm-hmm.
He did talk about like how much he likes coffee. So
Yeah.
I don't know if his game was like, I love hoops. He was like, I got to find some coffee shops. Okay. But you can absolutely see this being the last year of Nurkic's career.
Yeah.
He can't wait to go back and play overseas. Go back and spend the next 5 years just kind of being better than everybody because he's been playing in the NBA and he doesn't even have to play at the highest level in Europe if he doesn't want to. He can play close to home. And you can just see that being his next step, right?
Yes.
And like a lot of guys do that. Like Luis Scola leaves the NBA probably pretty unromantically, or, Hernan Gomez's have left the league and they're just like, yeah, but I'm going to go play in Europe and be really happy. And that's a good for them. But you could see Nurk just being like, I'm just biding my time to get out of the NBA and go back home, and I've got $80 million or $150 million in the bank, and life's going to be good. Mm-hmm. So I'll be curious, and you hope that doesn't become a distraction if you're a Jazz fan.
Yes.
So is that it?
Yeah, I think that's it.
All right, let's take a break. When we come back, we'll get to your mailbag questions. Stick around. More Jazz Notes coming up next. Welcome back to the Jazz Notes podcast. Ben Anderson, Chandler Holt. All right, we always like to wrap up the podcast with the mailbag. Find me on Twitter and find Chandler on Twitter at Ben's Hoops and Holt Sports or at Blue Sky. I post the prompt at about 11 o'clock every Monday, and you can respond to them. Or you can do what Dan does and send me a DM at any point in the week, and we'll try and answer them there. Dan, send in a question. Best highlight video to watch of the Utah Jazz during the slow period before Media Day next month. I would tell you to watch the best highlight reel, which is, and it's one of the few games I think you can actually find the full one on YouTube, Rutgers versus Penn State last year, where I've told this story before. Ace Bailey, I think, misses his first two shots, and you're like, ooh, this might be a long Ace Bailey night. And then he rattles off 13 straight makes, and each shot better than the last. Each shot just like more ridiculous than the last shot, including like his best dunk of the season. He had a couple where he like goes up and under of those dunks. You've seen that. No, he dunked on Yannick Niederhauser, who was the Clippers' 30th overall pick and was like kind of the good big shot blocking center in this year's draft, like kind of the athletic guy that they hope is Derek Lively. And he just absolutely yams in his face and just like gets attacked because he taunts him and then like is really apologetic for it. But I would tell you, if you want to get excited about Ace Bailey, I know there's the 39-point game, there's a 37-point game. Actually, the 30-point game against Penn State, where he truly makes 13 shots in a row, and they're just like pin downs and like threes and dunking on people. It's crazy, and you're just like, oh yeah, this dude is something else. Like there was a real monster of a basketball player here that, even with all the craziness, like when you talk about crazy shots that he takes these and makes these. So if you wanted to spend some time actually watching a game and getting excited about the Jazz, it's why people like Ace Bailey with games like that. It's why he ended up going number 5 overall. And as much as, you like to think scouts and NBA teams have different approaches to scouting, and they do, and they've got all access to all this information, you can't watch that game and not be like, holy cow. Holy cow. By the way, there was another interesting tweet about Ace Bailey since we're talking about him. A blogger who does a lot of, he actually has a Patreon that's very good, and I'll pull it up here, but went back and tried to find like who are actually the best college players last year when it looked at plus minus and tried to figure out plus minus, and plus minus is real hard, and adjusted box plus minus and all those things in college sports are hard because there's so many players and it's so hard to compare because not every team plays the same team over an 82-game schedule, small sample sizes, and everyone's playing something different. But the numbers came out extremely beneficial for Ace Bailey.
That's awesome.
And that was actually, if you dove into the numbers with Ace, that it was Jeremiah Engelman who put this out, adjusted plus minus. Rutgers was so much better when he was on the floor, especially defensively, which I think was really interesting. Offensively, it's kind of his reputation. I'm talking about 13 made shots in a row against Penn State. It's actually that they were like, his teammates were truly awful outside of Dylan Harper, like not Division I caliber players. And when they were off the floor, that team was awful. And when he was on the floor, they got better everywhere. So an interesting sign.
My answer for the highlight reel question: Year 1 Utah Jazz Lauri Markkanen highlights. All-star year highlights. Because I feel like last year, don't get me wrong, Lauri still definitely had his moments and he had his highlights, but I feel like there was not necessarily a bad taste, but it just wasn't as spectacular as year 1 was. Like year 1, he seriously was like a top 20 shooter and a top 20 dunker in the NBA.
Yeah,
and
he was one of the only players ever did, what was it, 200 threes and 100 dunks, I think, in a season?
Yes. And I think we're going to see a lot more of that this year. So
yeah, I think
that would be my answer.
I think so, too. I think that's a good take. All right, that's it for the DMs. Oh,
Okay.
I've got a question on Blue Sky. We'll get to that really quickly. From Alex from PGH says, might not get this in on time. You did. Who do you think the starting lineup is at the beginning of the season versus the end of the season? And who do you think might be in contention for a breakout year? And might anyone sneak in for awards consideration? We've talked a lot about the beginning of the season.
Yeah, and I think we
starting
said
lineup.
Keontae, Ace, Lauri, Kyle Filipowski, Walker, right?
That's kind of my guess.
Yeah, something like that.
Because I think Ace is going to start. If that was the case, maybe you go Keontae, and it was going to be different. You could go Keontae, Ace at the 2, and then at the 3 you could do like Cody. You could conceivably do Bryce Sensabaugh. He can play the 3, and then Lauri at the 4.
Yes,
and then Walker at the 5.
Yeah,
but I do think it's going to be Keontae.
Yes.
End of the season is an interesting question. I do think Walt Clayton's going to take the Jazz starting point guard job.
Okay.
I think he's going to be the Jazz's best guard on the team. So I'll go Walt, Ace, Taylor. I think Taylor, just because he's going to get brought along so slowly. Walker. Yeah. That's 4 of the 5. And I guess the question is, A, is Lauri still on the team? Which there's another question about that. And B, is Cody good enough? Well, no one's going to be good enough. If Lauri's on the team, he's starting, right? No one's replacing Lauri as far as the best player on the team this year by any means. So I don't think they're going to trade Lauri in season. So I'll say Walt, Ace, Lauri, Taylor, Walker.
Okay.
Is the closing 5.
It's kind of hard for the Jazz, though, because, and I might sound like a broken record, I've said that many times, they were one of the teams with the most starting lineups last year, and it's like they're clearly a developmental team. They're going to give all these guys looks. So I don't think it's going to be like, oh, they have this lineup for the first 30 games, this guy outperforms, so he'll be there for the rest of it. I think they're just going to play around with a lot of different lineups. Like, for example, the Spurs, they'll start with Keldon Johnson, then if Carter Bryant is awesome, by the end of the year, he'll be the starter. I don't think it's like that for the Jazz.
Man, I hated that Carter Bryant pick. You just reminded me, I really did not like that pick. That might come back to burn me, but anyways, okay, keep going.
But yeah, I don't think it's necessarily a starting and an ending starting lineup, but I do see what you're saying. I think that Keontae, to answer the question though, I think the Jazz will give Keontae a lot of looks. I think this year might be the year they're like, okay, what do we have with Keontae George? So for most improved, that was the question, right? I think that would be my answer for that.
Okay, that'd be interesting. Yeah. If the Jazz were to have a candidate for an award at the end of the season, Kyle Filipowski's 6th man.
Okay, yeah, I like that.
That would be mine. He could be at 14 points, 8 rebounds, because he's playing 32 minutes a night off the bench because he's the Jazz's true third big and kind of play the 5 and the 4. Even though I know I just mentioned him starting, but he moves out at some point. You know what I could also see at the end of the season? Walt, Keontae at the 2, Ace at the 3, Lauri at the 4, Walker at the 5.
Yeah.
I think Walt is going to take the starting point guard job because I think he's the best defensive player. I think he's a better defender than both Keontae, which is not saying a lot, and Isaiah, who's a better defender than Keontae, but not elite. Yes. So I think Walt's gonna be a guy. I told you just before the draft, I was like, that's a guy, and I'm still buying into it. In fact, I'm probably buying into it more after Summer League than even before the draft. So that's what I'm expecting.
Okay. Over to X now.
Yes.
First up from Jimbo Slice. I understand you need an ego to be a professional basketball player.
Oh, I thought he was going to say sports writer. I was like, slow down. It's true. Hold on.
But do most of the players think that they are better than they really are? Meaning, do they all think that they will one day be all-stars even though the coaches or fans know that's delusional thinking?
So here's the thing. They are better. That's the thing. These guys are all better than what they show. Yes. That's what's amazing. The problem is there's only so many roles to play. Not every guy can have a usage of 30%, in the NBA, not many. So the truth is there's 450 players in the league plus another 150 that are on two-way contracts. How many players do you think are happy with their role in the NBA of the 450? Probably fewer than 30.
Yeah, I was about to say 20.
Lauri's probably happy, but he's not in an ideal situation.
Yeah.
Cade's happy. Jason Tatum was happy, and even Jason Tatum's like, why do people not consider me a top 5 player?
Yeah.
I win a championship and I can't get on the floor in the Olympics?
Yeah.
Luka was happy in Dallas. I don't know if he's happy in LA. LeBron's not happy that Luka is there. It's that's what you got to get into. I think Jokic is happy other than he hates basketball. So Like, I just don't think there's that many guys who actually like their role and are better than that. All of these guys, one-on-one, or, you put them in college or whatever, they're the best player they've ever seen.
Yeah.
So in that sense, they are all actually better than the role they play. The guys who buy into their role, which is why I said this was such a green flag for Bryce Sensabaugh in his exit interviews, was like, other than the 5 or 10 best players in the league, who players are based on what their skill is. And I've got to become that. And for me, it's shooting.
Yeah.
And he's exactly right. Yeah. Bryce is exactly right. Bryce, you need to become Davis Bertans, and like a better version than that ideally. But like Davis made $19 million a year, I think, for a while because he was the best shooter in the league. It's just like, figure that out. Figure out that role and then add to it. But that's really valuable. So everyone thinks they can be great. Everyone thinks they should be starting for sure.
Yes.
Everyone thinks they should get more shots, but most of them are probably right.
Yeah.
Is the funny thing.
And for like, do most players think they're all-stars? I mean, you don't know, right? Like if they'll talk to their teammates about that, if anything. But like maybe there's guys like, this is just the first name that comes to my mind, so sorry about it, but Cam Whitmore. Like I'm sure he's like a player who's like, I could be the best player.
I'm a star.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
you also have to be careful because Malik Beasley thought that his whole career, or not Malik Beasley, super cool Bees. Michael Beasley.
Yes.
Excuse me. Michael Beasley thought he was a superstar his whole career and is out of the league as a result. Like he's a 3-on-3 star now. The guys who figure out how to maximize their idea of themselves and what their actual role is are the best players in the NBA.
Yes.
And the best ones, great. You're just an awesome player. The other ones have to buy into what's being asked of them. Yeah. And even they have to give up something, So I think that is part of it. All these guys are so absurdly good at basketball. Like, I just can't overstate that they are better at what they do than anyone you will ever meet is at anything else.
Yes.
To be one of the 450 best in the world, that's not like niche Lego building LDS temples. Like, you're in Utah. You're the only person who does that.
Yeah.
No, these guys are like the most competitive thing that has a pool of, several 100 million people who play basketball in their life. They are so good. Like Bryce, I was thinking about this yesterday. I want to ask Bryce, like, when were you a good shooter? When did that start for you? Because you might be one of the 10 best shooters in the league. I think he's that good. I think Bryce is that good of a shooter. Like, you look at his close to the year, 45% from 3 on 7 attempts a game. Like, he is truly awesome. When did that happen? And how do you hone that and hone that and hone that? It's just amazing how good they are at what they do.
One of my favorite quotes of all time is Brian Scalabrine saying, "He's closer to LeBron than you are to me."
Yeah, and he's exactly right.
Yeah.
It is also telling, though, it's a fun question, Jimbo, is that, like, you do get into NBA circles, and when guys open up, they're just like, and that dude was different.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I've talked to NFL players about it, being like, man, I'm good. And I saw Deshaun Jackson, and that dude was a freak. Yeah. Like, then there are guys who are just like, you see him in the weight room, and then you see him on the field, and it's just like, I've got an angle on him, and he's gone. Basketball's the same way. You hear Charles talk about playing against MJ. It's like, he's the only guy I ever played against who I knew was better than me. I just didn't belong on the court, but I just knew that guy was better than me. And you do get that.
Yeah.
There are players, especially like in the preseason, it's kind of fun. They will talk a little bit, not even off the record, but they're just like, that is a dude. Like, there are guys, and then there's me. And that's the other thing, and I love this about my job, because there's a question about being a basketball fan up here in a moment. But it's like, man, it's crazy to see Lauri. Like, it's hard to really express Lauri Markkanen is 7 feet tall. His shoulders are as wide as the doorway. He's got muscles over his entire body. He shoots 40% from 3. He has a 40-inch vertical. It's like, this is a perfect specimen. Yeah. And compared to Giannis, he's only okay.
Yeah.
Physically, I mean, he's a better shooter than Giannis, but like, see Lauri and you're like, that's the greatest physical specimen I've ever seen in my life. And then you see Giannis and you're like, oh, they just added an inch and 30 pounds of muscle and he's way faster and way more coordinated? How? How? Yeah, it's crazy. These guys are truly, and I mean this nice, they're just freaks. Just like absolutely specimens that don't match up with what anyone else is doing.
One last thing about this Jimbo question. I think there's a fine line between like confidence and a big ego. And I think like you have to have a lot of confidence to be in the NBA. Yeah. But like not everyone has a big ego, if that makes sense.
And you know what? There is imposter syndrome. Yeah. There are guys who are like, waiting for someone to tap me on the shoulder and tell me that like the real player is here. And they play with it their whole career and they can still carve out long careers. But you got to know what you can do.
Next up, Derek Nyam. What makes your list of favorite plays, shots, or moments that you have seen live in a Jazz game? I'll go first here. I haven't been to as many as you. But I saw Victor Wembanyama's first game in Salt Lake.
On Halloween, right?
Yes.
He wore the Slender Man costume?
Yeah.
That's very funny. No, he wore the anime costume, I think, here. Whichever one it was. I can't remember. Yeah.
But I remember I was down by the court during warm-ups and used to talk about like specimens. His person who helps him warm up is like 5'7", and he's like pushing against him like in the post and like getting him ready. And I was just like, this is crazy. Not even a play, but that was just the first time where I had that. Like you were talking about, like this is a human being who is just 7.5 feet tall.
Yeah.
And then in that game, he had like crazy dunks. He was shooting from 3. So that was just the one that stuck out to me.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Again, I've just been doing this for a long. I've been doing this since 2011. So I remember, man, I've seen like I saw Gordon Hayward hit a buzzer beater to beat San Antonio. Saw Mo Williams, I know, hit a 3 to beat San Antonio. Man, I'm trying to think of what like the best moments are. There were some times when like Donovan just went off. It was just like, oh, he's on one.
Yeah.
Like Donovan in the playoffs was crazy. It's like, I'm sure it's painful for Jazz fans to remember, but like Donovan in the playoffs was special and would just like, was audacious. And going up against Dylan Brooks in that Memphis series where Dylan was like, I'm going to take this dude out of the game. And Donovan was just like, I'm going to erase you from the planet. Like, you're great, and I'm so good. I'm so much better than you are. And Dylan was just, like, frustrated and mad and, like, trying to fight him. Remember Donovan ended up throwing the ball at Dylan Brooks when he was in Cleveland?
Yep.
That stems back to that playoff series where Dylan Brooks was just like, I'm going to make your life hell. And Donovan was like, you don't know what I'm made of. And just cooked him. I mean, over and just 40 every time he stepped on the floor. I was out of the business, but I ended up doing a weird thing. Like the Jazz during the playoffs needed help for PR randomly.
Yeah.
I think I was at the Ricky Rubio triple-double game against Russell Westbrook in the playoffs. So that, I definitely remember that. And I was also just writing for KSL.com, just like a weekly basis.
Yeah.
So I was at that game for one regard or another. That was crazy. Just because Ricky was a very easy person to like and put up a triple-double on Russell Westbrook. I think after Russ had said, like, he's never doing that again, and then cooked him. So those are there's fun moments. But honestly, the best stuff is before the game. Like you said, like being down on the court and just seeing the people and seeing how everyone kind of goofs around and gets in the mode and seeing how serious some guys are. That is the best stuff.
All right, I'm going to combine 2 questions here.
Okay.
First from Caleb Manser. He says, if Lauri comes back into All-Star form, do you think the Jazz trade him before the deadline to ensure lottery odds? And then Positive Jazz Guy, if the Jazz were to trade Lauri before the trade deadline, what would or should a realistic trade look like?
So there are kind of mixed opinions on this. And I don't mean like thoughts of like whether the Jazz should or shouldn't, but like there are different strategies is the word I'm looking for. So in some ways it's better to not trade a player in season.
Yes.
It's better to trade off season, especially when you're talking about $45 million or 44, whatever Lauri makes, because you can carry up to 20 guys or whatever it is on your roster in the off season, which means you could trade Lauri for 5 players to aggregate the salaries to get there. The hard part about that in the season is you can't take on 5 guys mid-season. You have to cut 4 other guys from your roster, plus the guy who's coming in to replace the Lauri roster spot. So that's why some of these big blockbusters are hard to do in season and more likely to happen in the offseason. On the flip side, I think there's a real chance Lauri is the highest profile player on the trade market in February.
Yeah.
And that inflates his value in a sense, right? There's low supply and high demand. So Lauri's the best player, which is if you go into the offseason next year, maybe Giannis is available, or maybe Devin Booker is finally asked out, or maybe these other guys become available and, then Lauri's the 5th or 6th guy, which is what happened this summer.
Yes.
Right? All these other guys were kind of out there and available, and Lauri's value was not as high as it was. So I think you probably trade him in season. In all honesty, though, I know like the ability to take back multiple players probably helps. I think that's probably the type of deal you do.
An add-on from Positive Jazz Guy. If they traded him 1-for-1, what players would be equal to and could benefit both teams, or is that not really possible because of his max salary?
The Jazz should have some salary cap room, so that will make it a little bit easier. I'm trying to pull up player contracts really quick because Lauri makes, what did I say, 44? Looking at players that are like right in that area for the 2025-26 season.
And while you're looking at this, to be noted is that there's hardly ever just 1-for-1s in the NBA.
Yeah,
there's picks
it's pretty
or
rare.
Smaller things. Like the most recent and probably about as high profile as it'll get for 1-for-1 was the Caruso for Josh Giddey trade.
Right.
So
would you do like Domantas Sabonis? You know what I mean? I'm not saying would you do that, but I'm just saying like players who I could possibly see moved, and you're really just rearranging chairs at that point, you know? OG Anunoby, though OG's always kind of hurt is the problem, but maybe the Knicks say like, hey, we want to up the offense even further.
Yeah.
The defense is okay if Mike Brown can get them playing defense well. Trae Young's always kind of a name that's out there.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe like if Ace breaks out and you're ready to have Taylor or Flip be the 4, and you're just like, okay, Lauri, we need a guy who puts it all together. Mm-hmm. Maybe Trae Young makes sense. I've never been a huge Trae Young guy. I think small guards who score but don't play defense are hard to win with. You know where I could see, in all honesty, and this would be a big coup for the Jazz? Franz Wagner.
Okay.
So Franz he's entering his 5-year deal right now. Mm-hmm. If Orlando was like, oh my gosh, 5 years? Like, this is, now look, Lauri has 4 years, right? Like his deal is just kicking in.
Yes.
And Lauri actually makes more, I think, on average per year over the next 4 years. Mm-hmm. But like maybe if they were just like, oh, Franz can't shoot at all, and we really need shooting next to Paolo, and Desmond came in as really good shooting, but like that's the key. Maybe something like that. And Jazz get younger. Yeah. Franz is a little closer. You know, Ja interests you at all? Not really to me, but like, you know, Zion's at $39 million. You could probably do Lauri for Zion straight up.
Of those, I would definitely say Franz. Like for most of the other ones, like especially like Domantas Sabonis and Zion, I'm like, are either of these teams winning the deal? You know what I mean? Like the Pelicans probably would because they're getting away from Zion, but. I like at least the Franz in my mind makes a little bit of sense.
Evan Mobley, like the Cavs aren't trading Evan Mobley, but if they were like, hey, we can't play two bigs anymore the way we were, we can't do Evan Mobley, we think he's a center, and we can't play Jared Allen, he's truly a center. Mm-hmm. What can we get for Evan Mobley? Like I think the Jazz would do that in a heartbeat. Oh yeah, you know, so the Jazz would have to throw in stuff, but like that's kind of what I'm thinking. Otherwise, I've talked a little bit about, and I'll just play with the trade machine really quick for you, like. The team that I think makes sense if it wasn't a 1-for-1 continues to be Detroit. Okay. I just think that's a team that's pretty close, that probably wants to win now. Yeah. Has some pieces to get them to the top 4 in the East. Like they're not, I think they were finished 5th last year, right? Didn't they lose the 4-5 matchup to the Knicks in the first round? So if they felt that the rest of the East had totally fallen apart with Milwaukee and Boston and Indiana not being in the picture this year, could you do Lauri to the Pistons for Tobias Harris, which doesn't excite anybody, but it gets you money. Yep. Jaden Ivey, who Jazz fans have always kind of liked, for $10 million, and like Ron Holland, who was a draft pick last year. Again, I know they like some of these people, or like I don't think you can get a Sar Thompson. I think those Thompson twins are going to be kind of untradeable for a little while. I think they're going to be on the like hold on to that guy to see what happens. But you could do Lauri for Tobias, Jaden Ivey, and Ron Holland if the Jazz were going to go like super young and then try and get a draft pick back as well.
The Pistons were 6th last year, but
6th, okay.
Boston 2 and Indiana 4th. Both those teams are probably not going to be there. And then other teams, Orlando will be better with Desmond Bane, and then the Atlanta Hawks had one of the best off seasons. Yeah, so like top 5. For
but there will be teams in the East, I think, buying.
Yes,
so that's absolutely more so than maybe teams in the West buying. Yeah, maybe a team like Golden State still wants to unload Kuminga and Podziemski, and you just go back to that trade, which is possible. So that's kind of what I'd keep an eye out if they trade Lauri at all. But the value would be that in season he may have more value than the off season because then there's a bigger pool.
Next question from Scott Johnson. How is the work on Delta Center going? If it's at all behind schedule, who pays for any overtime, rush fees, etc.? Does SEG absorb all those, or do taxpayers up subsidizing any part of that?
I know that there was some wording in the initial pitch to the city of like, this could slide as high as X amount of dollars. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't totally baked in every penny how much it was going to be. I couldn't follow up on that. Yeah. My guess would be SEG. Okay. And look, they have other, I don't even want to say private donors because I kind of know who it is, but like they have other people putting money up for this to be approved. And you can probably understand who that might be when you think of big money in the downtown Salt Lake City, you know, so might have a say or be willing to help here or there. Mm-hmm. That's just what I've heard, by the way. We'll see. Don't want to get myself in trouble. But there will be, Ryan pays for it. It's his building, so he can afford it and pay for it. They just got a lot going on right now. But it sounds like everything's going according to plan. I've not heard any major catastrophes. In fact, the Des News just had a big article on, I think they got to go check it out. So it's kind of interesting to read what they had to say.
maybe related, maybe not related to what you just said. Another question from Scott. With the schedule out now and single games on sale, wanted to ask about ticket demand. And he asks, specifically, isn't having a highly relevant, newsworthy NCAA team down south likely to soften demand for Jazz tickets?
No.
No.
I mean,
don't think so either.
the hockey club didn't have any effect on it.
Yeah.
You know, the Mammoth now haven't had any effect on season ticket holder for the youth or for the Jazz because there's just no crossover at all. Apparently, even though their schedules are identical, they play in the same building. They play the same days sometimes, not in the same building, but the same, months certainly. So I don't think you're going to see that. No, I don't think that's going to matter at all.
All right.
That doesn't mean that BYU might not be the best basketball team in the state next year. It probably will be. That doesn't mean they could beat the Jazz, but as far as in their league, they might be the best.
2 more questions. One that just came in 8 minutes ago from Yahoo Go Jazz. Any word or update on a potential Walker Kessler extension? Are we wanting to push it till next summer?
Next summer.
If
it's not done now, it will be next summer. Unless Walker were to just come to the table and be like, 4 years, $80 million. Let's get the deal done. I need peace of mind.
Yes.
Which I guess could happen. Jabari Smith signed an early deal with the Rockets versus hitting restricted free agency next year for fair market value. He still got like $120 million for 5 years, I think. But probably could have gotten more, I guess, if he had waited until next season, but just wanted to get the deal done.
Yeah.
So I guess if Walker just wanted to get the deal done, he could get it done. If he wanted to give the Jazz a big discount, it doesn't really make sense for him. He's coming off a massive year. Might have been the Jazz's best player. He's going to have more opportunity with John Collins out of the way this year, and the Jazz are going to be trying to win more. So I think Walker's going to have a huge year, and that's probably beneficial for him. And it benefits the Jazz because they go into next summer with only his $8 million, $14 million, I wrote it up, $14 million cap hold on the books. And, he's probably going to sign for 30 plus.
Yeah.
So you get an extra $20 million to just play with in freedom until you sign him. So that's the advantage there.
Last question from Utah Jazz optimist, the great Bampus. You've noted you are not a Jazz fan, in quotation marks. Were you a Jazz fan growing up until your work in media, or were you always just more of an NBA fan?
So I grew up in Utah. So, of course, as like a 10-year-old who's a basketball fan, I'm like, John Stockton and Karl Malone.
Yeah.
And then post-finals, I really checked out. And I entered junior high and did every horrible junior high thing of just like trying to figure out who I am and whatever. Yeah. So my junior year in high school, sophomore year in high school, John and Karl retire. And the 03-04 Jazz early on really exceed expectations. And some of it's just as simple as like literally I bought NBA 2K for the first time again. Like it was because I think they were doing this thing where like all the PlayStation games were $20. I was like, well, play with the local team. And it was like, who are these players? I've never seen them before. And then I started watching. And in my opinion, again, this is like everyone thinking the best music came out or the best SNL cast was when they were in high school. The best the NBA has been was like the 03-04 season. Like the storylines were amazing. So I fell in love with the NBA as a whole for the first time because I also didn't grow up with cable television. But my friend, I went to his house, I was just there every night in high school. He had TNT and he had ESPN. So we just watched basketball religiously my junior and senior year of high school. And it became a true obsession. And so I guess you would say the Jazz were the gateway drug, but the addiction really quickly became the 03-04 Pistons that won the title. Tim Duncan, who's my favorite player of all time. Kevin Garnett in Minnesota before he goes to Boston. All of these teams, like the horrible Charlotte Bobcats, like I still have inside jokes with my friends about the Bobcats. So like really quickly, when my actual, like, I didn't know what I was watching when I was 10 years old. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like I was like, shoot it every time you touch the ball.
Yeah.
When I really started to get into basketball again, 03-04, and it was NBA wide really quickly.
Yeah.
And so like I haven't been that type of like a Jazz specific fan as at any point in like my teenagers or adulthood at all. That was like a very little kid. Now, I really admire that. I think one of the reasons there's a lot of Jazz fans that are really smart is because they grew up watching really good basketball with Jerry Sloan and John Stockton and Karl Malone. It was smart basketball. It was consistently a good product. It was easy to understand because there was so much continuity because Jerry was here and John and Karl were here. You got to know the game because there was a really strong control group. It's like a science experiment.
Yes.
If you see the same thing over and over, and I don't just mean game to game, I mean play to play, just like go run 1-4 pick and roll, over and over and over, you're going to get a sense of like how things are changing and moving and when it looks different. I think fans are smart as a result. And I think I benefited some of watching basketball by watching those guys play.
Gotcha.
So I really admire that and I'm grateful for that. But no, my like fandom for basketball, I'm still a basketball fan. I'm a huge NBA fan.
Yeah.
And that still exists.
Yeah.
So, but it's been that way for now. That's, that was 15 and 16 and 17 years old. I'm almost 40. So.
Yeah. For me, I am from the Seattle area, and I'm a big Seattle sports fan, Mariners, Seahawks, etc. But I grew up playing basketball. That was the first sport. Like I played little league soccer, and I would just sit down and like pick the flowers. But then I played basketball, and I actually loved it. And
you're tall.
Yeah,
it helped.
Yeah.
Were you always tall?
No, actually, my freshman year of high school, I was 5'3".
Okay, and then you shot up.
Yeah, shot up in like my junior year.
Anthony Davis.
Yeah,
exactly. Guard skills.
Yeah, exactly. And it was hard for me because I love basketball, and then I feel like for young kids, it's always good to have a team. Like you said, you were a Jazz fan for a bit. For me, I was a Oklahoma City fan.
Okay.
Because I was like the very small amount of people who like, they kind of are the Supersonics.
Yeah.
And then when I got old enough to realize I was a Cardinal Sin, I eventually became just an all NBA fan.
Yeah.
And that's how I've been for a while. I like to root for players who are from Washington, Zach LaVine, Paolo Banchero. Sure. But I feel like that kind of helped me coming into media. Not necessarily just in Utah, but anywhere, is I don't really have a team. So
yeah, it helps.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess it's, I played junior jazz growing up. So like I went to Delta Center when I was 10 and 11 years old. You know what I mean? But yeah, by the time it all came together, like, so 03, and there's other stories here. I'll just tell you since we're talking. Like 03, 04, the Jazz were so bad, right? That they were just giving away tickets any way you could. 04, 05. My parents' neighbor bought a car. And when they bought a car from Larry H. Miller, you got something like 24 tickets to games. Like, I can't remember. It was some crazy promotion to get people to buy cars. And what I learned was you could go and this guy wasn't a fan at all. So he just like gave my parents the tickets and they knew I was a basketball fan. So you could trade it was 24 Upper Bowl tickets, I think, or something like that. Maybe it was 12. You could trade 2 Upper Bowl tickets for 1 Lower Bowl ticket. Well, look, junior in high school, senior in high school, like, I just was like, I just want to go to a game. I want to go to games, and I'm fine going by myself. So I could trade 2 for 1 and go watch a game by myself. Like, and I circled, like, Ben Wallace and Rasheed Wallace are going to be in Utah. Like, I got to go see those guys play basketball. So I would circle games from other NBA teams that I wanted to see. Like, even at that point, I was getting weirdly dorky, not thinking I was ever going to have a career in the business, but like trying to be like, is this Primo Brezic guy for real or is he crappy? He's crappy. Like it was like that level of stupidity, but trying to figure out like, this Bonzi Wells guy's interesting. What's he about? I want to see him in person. So that has always been like a sickness type of basketball approach where like, again, Utah was here. It was easy to watch every Jazz game because at that point they were on K-Jazz before they had left for the RSN, and then now that they're back on K-Jazz, I think you'll build out fans again because they're just available. But the games were on. It was just a good gateway drug to see everybody.
Speaking of being a dorky, for me, it's interesting hearing like your growth into being a basketball lover and mine. Because for me, I bought every single NBA 2K from like 2K11 to like 2K23 or whatever.
Yeah.
Played that an unhealthy amount, and then also like I would just be in class and just like looking back on this, it's like, I don't even know why, but I would just scroll through Basketball Reference and just like look at stats and just like all this stuff.
And that's a big part of it too. Like I will tell you, I'm just like, Draft Express was starting, which is now Jonathan Givony. It's like, then he's leaving ESPN, so I'll be curious to see what he does. But like, Draft Express was just picking up. And it was the first point when the Jazz had like lottery picks. Like literally 03, 04, the Jazz have their first first lottery pick. They had the 13th pick and the 15th pick, and they just whiffed it. They got Kirk Snyder and Chris Humphreys. We've talked about this, but like, it was interesting to be like, oh, you can go and find out information about these people beyond like who are the top 4 players in the draft. But like, there are mock drafts now, and it's not like one is published in the Tribune or wherever at the time is the only outlet you had. Oh, and I should also note that one of my best friends in high school, who was not a basketball fan, his stepdad, I guess I'll say, his mom's boyfriend, was Phil Miller, who was the Jazz's beat writer. So as I'm falling in love with the NBA, I have unique access to the Jazz's beat writer. You know what I mean? So I'm just peppering him with like, who's this guy? And not realizing that like, oh, just because he has this job doesn't mean he's an NBA fan like I am. He's a fan of paying the bills, which is what happens to you. But I'm like, tell me about Devin Brown.
Yeah.
He's like, well, he plays for the Spurs. I don't know anything about Devin Brown. What are you talking about? You know what I mean? But like, it became a sickness really quick, and there was access to it because like, speaking of NBA 2K, like there was the NBA 2K message boards. It was like a place to gather and talk about basketball with other people. It's like the game. But even within the NBA 2K message boards, there was a sideboard that was like the actual NBA board. You could get on and actually just like talk basketball with people. So there was a whole account of like, there was places to talk about it in a way that was new and novel to me, that like a couple of my high school friends were diehard basketball fans, but like I was like, I didn't realize this was obviously the career path I was on.
Yes.
You know, but I just couldn't get enough of it. So I just like had to get online and read about it. And like, did you see this player? And it was like Dwight Howard and Emeka Okafor draft was like the first year, you know, it was just like, and then there was an outlet for it to like really get the hook in you. And it worked really well for me. So that's a very long answer to that question.
Yes.
But
all right, I think that's it.
is that it? No one's weighed in over my 40-minute answer about being a basketball fan growing up?
No more new questions.
No one's listening either. So appreciate everyone who sent in the questions. I don't think I got any more on Blue Sky either here. Fun to have you back. This is available on YouTube. Be back with you again next Monday. I know we've said this several times over. I think we're really entering the slow period.
Yes.
But EuroBasket will be kicking up. That means there's 3 Jazz basketball players playing. Lauri, Jusuf Nurkic, and then Gabriel Procida is going to play as well. So we'll talk about those and get you updated.
We'll get more creative with our podcasting as well.
And the Jazz seem to be, I mean, the season's getting close. I know it's the dead season. It's the dead season because it's the quiet before the storm.
Yes.
Everyone's trying to squeeze in those last few vacations. So anyways, we'll be back next week. Thanks for tuning in. Read us at KSLSports.com.